Sold to Be a Wife is one of the most terrifying foster care memoirs I have ever read because the threat is so real. This is a Maggie Hartley foster care memoir released originally in 2018. I don't remember when I first read it. It would have been around then, maybe 2019. And this is actually the last of Maggie Hartley's books that I needed to reread. And it's the one that I remembered the most. So much of this just has stuck with me over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years. And it doesn't surprise me. It's very well written, a couple of grammatical errors here and there, nothing too significant. But generally, in terms of the narrative, it is gripping, shocking, challenging to read because it's just so terrifying, but also obviously very easy to read because I couldn't put it down. Maggie is fostering a 14-year-old girl called Shazia. And Shazia told her best friend at school that her parents were going to send her to Pakistan for an arranged marriage. And when she found out that that would mean she would be going into care, because obviously that's a serious thing, and social services got involved, she decided to say that she lied about it. But something isn't quite right. And I don't really want to tell you too much more about this because it is shocking and I don't want to give away too much. But basically, Shazia's life becomes increasingly in danger as the story progresses. And as much as we know foster care memoirs are heavily amended to protect the identities of the children and the families involved, although I don't think the family deserve to have their identity protected, certainly not in this case with the way they treated her, these stories do happen. We hear about them in the news. They're shocking, horrible stories. Well, actually, I say we hear about them in the news. I usually hear about them when I'm watching true crime documentaries, when cases have gone so far that it's too late. Those are obviously usually cases where social services and the authorities aren't actually aware of what's going on. But with Shazia's case, thankfully, they stepped in, and the reason they stepped in was because Shazia had the mind to tell her best friend something that was happening, and her best friend, thankfully, thought about telling her teacher, which obviously put things further up the chain, so that help was put in place. However, even with social services involved, it doesn't mean Shazia is safe, and things just escalate. And they get worse and worse and worse and more dangerous and more terrifying. And that really comes across in the book. It's very well written. That sense of fear is right throughout. And as a reader, I really felt that. And it meant it was difficult to read, but also impossible to put down. And it's one of the strongest, most memorable, most shocking foster care memoirs I have ever read. Usually the shocking memoirs are about younger children who've been subjected to all kinds of horrific abuse. With teenagers, they're not usually that shocking. They might be upsetting or, present questionable circumstances, but occasionally there'll be one where a teenager is the main subject and it's just, I'm in complete disbelief reading it, even though I know these things do happen. I don't want to say too much more than that because I thoroughly recommend it. I didn't intentionally leave this one to last when rereading Maggie Hartley's books. It's just purely a coincidence, and it's easily the most memorable, the most shocking, and I thoroughly recommend it. It's very eye-opening. It's very revealing about what some people have to go through, and I do absolutely recommend it, but I will say it is difficult. So if you're looking for a light-hearted read, I mean, in general, I wouldn't recommend foster care memoirs if you want something that's quite light. There are a couple that are not very emotive, but generally speaking, they're not very light-hearted. But certainly, if you feel like you're in the right headspace to read something that's going to really pull all of your emotions out of you, then give it a go. Sold to Be a Wife is very shocking, very well written, and I'll probably read it for a third time at some point. And when I do, chances are I'll remember it just as vividly because it has really stuck with me, and I'm pretty sure it always will.